The whine of gravel under heavy tires broke the late afternoon calm. Two white animal control trucks rolled up to the end of my driveway, lights flashing, engines humming with quiet authority. Titan and Echo were already alert, ears perked. Noses high in the breeze, their powerful silhouettes standing like sentinels on either side of me. I took one slow breath, squinting into the sun as the first officer stepped out. He looked tense, hesitant, the kind of posture someone takes when they expect a fight. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "we received a report from your HOA that these dogs are aggressive, unlicensed, and a threat to community safety." I didn't say anything. Not yet, because just across the street, leaning on her porch railing like she was watching a parade she organized herself, stood Karen Whitlock, our brand new HOA president. She wore her signature outfit, pristine white yoga pants, a pastel top, and that fake smile smirk combo that made you want to scrape it off with a paint scraper. She turned slightly, whispering to the neighbor beside her, eyes flicking toward my property, like a queen surveying a battlefield she already claimed victory over. "They look dangerous, don't they?" I heard her say. "Those kinds of dogs don't belong here." I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "These dogs aren't just pets," I said, finally turning to the officer. "They're retired K-9 South. Titan served 8 years in narcotics. Echo tracked down missing kids in 3 states. They've both saved more lives than I can count. And they're fully licensed, documented, and better trained than half the people. Carrying badges." I reached into my jacket, pulled out my own ID, and handed it over. The officer's eyes widened. "Rachel Torres," I said. "Retired police lieutenant. 25 years in the force. 12 of those in K-9. He took a step back, blinking at the laminated badge in his hand. Titan didn't move. Echo didn't growl. They just stood there, disciplined and calm, like they were still on duty. The officer glanced toward Karen's porch, then back at me. "She said you were keeping them off leash, that they chased a kid through the neighborhood." I folded my arms. "There's camera footage on all 4 corners of this house. Nobody's been chased. Karen just doesn't like dogs or people she can't control." And still, Karen smiled, triumphant, for now, but this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I looked the officer dead in the eye and said, clear and low, "She picked the wrong dogs to mess with." Comment below where you're watching from, because HOA bullies like this are everywhere, and what happened next will absolutely blow your mind and prove that justice can prevail, even against the most powerful bullies. My name is Rachel Torres. I am 52 years old, and I spent 25 years in law enforcement, most of them in the K-9 unit. When I retired, I thought I was done with all the noise, the sirens, the tension, the endless fight to keep people safe. But life has a way of surprising you. Titan and Echo are more than dogs to me. They are family, my oldest friends, my partners in every sense of the word. Titan saved my life once during a drug bust in downtown Los Angeles. Without him, I wouldn't be standing here today. Echo was my final partner before I hung up my badge. The dog I trusted to watch my back when the streets grew dangerous and the nights long. Together, they carry stories of loyalty and courage that most people will never understand. When my husband was killed in the line of duty, another cop who gave everything, I thought my world had shattered. The grief was suffocating, but Titan and Echo pulled me through those darkest days. They became my reason to keep going, my only living connection to a past I could neither forget nor let go. I built this house for us, a quiet refuge tucked away in the countryside, far from the chaos of the city. It is our sanctuary. The property is modest but well kept. Wide open spaces surround the fenced yard where Titan and Echo roam freely. The scent of pine and fresh earth fills the air, mingling with the distant hum of cicadas and the soft rustling of leaves. At dawn, the sun spreads golden light over the rolling fields, casting long shadows that stretch toward the porch where I drink my morning coffee. It is peaceful here, almost too peaceful sometimes. That peace has been shattered by Karen Whitlock. Karen arrived shortly after I settled in. She is the new HOA president, and from the start, it was clear she disliked my dogs. Or maybe she just disliked me. Her complaints started small whispers about barking too much, grumbles about disrupting neighborhood aesthetics, and vague warnings about safety concerns. I listened politely and tried to explain Titan and Echo's backgrounds, but Karen's patience ran thin quickly. The HOA sent a notice limiting outdoor pet hours to an unreasonable window from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., as if my retired K9 South would suddenly turn feral at sunset. I declined respectfully, explaining that the dogs needed fresh air and exercise beyond arbitrary hours. The notice came back flagged, and Karen was already drafting the next set of regulations. Despite the growing tension, I tried to stay calm. I thought we could handle this diplomatically. But every conversation with Karen left me feeling smaller, as if I were the problem in a neighborhood that once felt like home. Every morning, I watched Titan patrol the perimeter, his ears twitching at every sound. Echo sits close by, calm but alert, sensing my unease. They are my protectors now, not just from strangers, but from this creeping injustice that threatens our peaceful life. I often think back to the nights when we trained under the harsh glow of street lamps, the commands sharp in the cold air, the bond between us unbreakable. Those memories give me strength. This fight isn't just about some HOA rules. It's about defending the last pieces of my family and honoring the sacrifices we've all made. Karen's actions feel personal, but I know it's bigger than me. There's something beneath the surface, a drive to push me out, to make the place I love unbearable. But no one warned Karen that these dogs are not just pets. They are warriors. They carry scars and medals where others have scars and memories, and I am no ordinary neighbor. Karen Whitlock. The name alone carried a chill that settled deep in my bones every time I heard it. She was the new president of our HOA, and from the moment she stepped onto the scene, it was clear she wasn't here to play nice. At 48. Karen was tall and slim, always impeccably dressed in her signature look, a bleach blonde bob cut that framed a face perpetually set in a scowl, tight yoga pants, and oversized designer sunglasses that hid more than just her eyes. In her hand, almost like an extension of her arm, was a clipboard stuffed with papers, violation notices, and whatever else she thought might give her power. She carried herself like she was royalty, but the truth was far less glamorous. A failed realtor, Karen was desperate to claw her way up the social ladder, and the HOA presidency was her latest and most bitter conquest. Her petty obsession with control was thinly veiled behind a facade of neighborhood safety and community standards, but everyone who knew her saw the truth. She was vindictive, egomaniacal, and cruel. Her war with me started quietly. At first, I received the first violation notice slipped under my door one morning, printed in bold letters: aggressive dogs violation of community safety regulations. It was signed Karen Whitlock, HOA president. The notice claimed Titan and Echo were a threat because they were non-compliant with leash laws, and that excessive barking had been reported by several neighbors. It was absurd. Titan and Echo were always leashed when outside the yard, and our fence was more than enough to keep them safe and secure. The barking complaints, mostly from Karen herself, I suspected. I responded with a calm letter, reminding the board of the HOA's exemption clause for working dogs. Dogs actively serving in law enforcement or related fields were allowed certain privileges. Karen shot back quickly. Retired dogs are not working dogs, she declared in a reply dripping with condescension. The war had begun. Karen didn't just stop at letters. One bright morning, there was a sharp knock at my door. I opened it to find her standing there, clipboard in hand, eyes cold and calculating. I am documenting all violations, she said flatly, scanning the yard as if she expected to find a crime scene. This will be the first of many notices. If things do not improve. Her tone was smug, almost theatrical. She pulled out her phone and started snapping pictures of the yard. Titan resting in the shade, Echo drinking from his bowl. I stood quietly, watching the performance unfold. Over the following weeks, Karen's surveillance grew more invasive. I caught glimpses of her lurking near the fence, sometimes early in the morning, other times late at night. She spoke quietly on the phone, directing conversations with a venom that made my skin crawl. One afternoon, I overheard her whispering to a neighbor, "Those dogs are military trained, dangerous. I wouldn't let my kids anywhere near." That property. That was the moment I realized Karen was waging a personal war. It wasn't about safety or rules. It was about control and power. One day, during an HOA meeting, Karen dropped the real bombshell. With a smug smile, she said, "Our neighborhood needs revitalization. We're aiming to attract new buyers, families who want a safe, quiet environment. Pets like Rachel's don't belong here. It's about preserving the community's image." It was thinly veiled but clear. She wanted me and my dogs gone, not because we were dangerous, but because we didn't fit her sanitized vision. Her relentless accusations began to feel like a suffocating weight. Every time I thought I could catch a break, another complaint would surface. Another letter arrived, and Karen's eyes would gleam with a satisfaction that felt almost cruel. She warned me once with a chilling veiled threat, "You wouldn't want your dogs taken away over a technicality, would you?" I looked at her then and thought about the long years Titan and Echo had served, not just for me, but for the community. I knew this battle was far from over. But I also knew something else. Karen had no idea who she was messing with. The war Karen Whitlock waged against me and my dogs escalated far beyond petty HOA notices. It became a relentless campaign of harassment, carefully crafted to break me down piece by piece, to make me question every breath I took on my own property. Animal control became regular visitors, summoned by anonymous complaints that seemed to spring up overnight. "Aggressive dogs," they said again, the same tired claim. Officers would arrive, leashes in hand, only to find Titan and Echo calm, well-trained, and far from threatening. But the reports kept coming. I knew who was behind them. Then came the rumors, whispers circulating through the neighborhood and beyond. Someone had called the county and reported me for running an unlicensed kennel. It was a blatant lie. I had no kennel, no business, just 2 retired service dogs who had earned their rest. But the damage was done. County inspectors showed up, digging through my records and questioning me like a criminal. Karen used every tool at her disposal to tighten the noose. At the next HOA meeting, she pushed through new proposals, higher fines for dog-related violations, stricter leash requirements, even limits on the number of pets allowed per household. It was clear these rules were written for one purpose too: target me and force me out. The cruelty didn't stop at rules and regulations. Flyers appeared around the neighborhood, plastered on mailboxes and lampposts. Bold letters screamed, "Dangerous dogs next door." Faces of Titan and Echo photos, taken without my permission, were splashed alongside warnings to keep children away. It was a vicious character assassination campaign, designed to isolate me and turn neighbors against me. One night, I found the fence slashed in several places, deep gashes that threatened to let my dogs out, or worse, let others in. The doghouse had been spray-painted with the word "Killers." The sight shook me to my core. Whoever did this wanted to send a message, and it worked. But the hardest blow came from the community I had tried to serve beyond my property. I volunteered at the local school, teaching kids about animal safety and respect. It was something I was proud of, a way to give back after all the years in law enforcement. Karen used this against me, pushing for my removal with fabricated safety concerns. Within weeks, I was banned from the program. My reputation smeared in hushed conversations. Legal harassment became another weapon. Karen pressured the HOA attorney to serve a cease and desist order on my property use, accusing me of commercial activity due to my dog training sessions and neighborhood volunteering. The letter was cold and final, threatening fines and legal action if I did not comply. The strain took a heavy toll. I began doubting myself, wondering if I could hold out much longer. Nights were sleepless. Nightmares crept in like unwelcome shadows, images of losing Titan and Echo, of being forced from the home I had built with my own hands. The dogs sensed my anxiety. Titan became restless, pacing the yard with a tension I had never seen before. Echo, usually so composed, would whimper softly in the dark. Meanwhile, Karen grew bolder, her arrogance swelling like a storm. At one HOA social event, she boasted about her contacts in real estate and development. Her voice was dripping with disdain as she suggested I sell quietly and make it easier on everyone. It was a thinly veiled threat, a reminder that she held the cards, and I was the one losing. Slowly, the pieces began to fall into place. The attacks weren't random. They were part of a calculated scheme. Karen was working with a development firm eyeing our neighborhood for a large project, and she needed certain homes vacated. My property was a prime target. The realization hit hard, but it also ignited a spark. This was no longer just about me and my dogs. It was about standing up to corruption, exposing a scheme that threatened our entire community. I couldn't afford to back down, not now. After months of relentless harassment and mounting pressure, I knew I could not fight this battle alone. The stakes were too high, not just for me and my dogs, but for the entire neighborhood. Something deeper was going on beneath Karen's polished facade. Her cruelty wasn't personal, it was calculated, part of a bigger, darker plan. I reached out to old contacts from my law enforcement days, people who owed me favors and knew how to dig beneath the surface. One afternoon, Ted, my next-door neighbor and a retired FBI agent, stopped by with a USB drive and a determined look. "I think you're going to want to see this," he said. What Ted had uncovered was damning. Surveillance footage showing Karen trespassing on my property late at night, wandering through my yard, snapping photos, and even tampering with the gate latch. She wasn't just a meddling HOA president. She was breaking the law. The footage was grainy but undeniable. Around the same time, Janelle, a retired CPA who lived 3 houses down, shared what she had found after months of quietly reviewing HOA financial statements. She pulled out spreadsheets, bank statements, and invoices that didn't add up. Karen had been funneling HOA funds into her own accounts, paying herself for consulting fees and community development projects that never materialized. Janelle's meticulous analysis painted a clear picture of fraud and embezzlement. It didn't stop there. Malik, a bright teenager who had trained under me to work with dogs, had secretly recorded a conversation with Karen during an HOA meeting. His phone captured Karen threatening me openly, warning that if I didn't comply, she would make life unbearable and use every tool to ruin me. Then came Maria's story. Maria, a single mother evicted from her home after a series of fines and false complaints, bravely stepped forward with stacks of documentation, letters, photos, and affidavits proving the HOA's pattern of abuse and manipulation under Karen's direction. She was one of many whose voices had been silenced, until now, piece by piece. The evidence was coming together. Digging further, I discovered Karen owned significant stock in the development company behind the proposed expansion plans for our neighborhood. The HOA lawyer was her cousin, conveniently silent as the board rubber-stamped every outrageous proposal. Several other board members had been quietly bought off or coerced into compliance. I gathered everything into one massive binder: unedited HOA meeting minutes, detailed financial records, sworn affidavits from neighbors, audio recordings of Karen's threats, and the surveillance footage Ted provided. It was a mountain of evidence, each piece carefully cataloged and cross-referenced. For the first time in months, I felt hope that the community was waking up too. Neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak began reaching out. They shared their own stories of intimidation and unfair treatment. We were no longer isolated. We were a force. Ted offered legal advice. Janelle helped organize the finances for the impending legal battle. Malik became our eyes and ears, documenting everything on his phone. Maria coordinated with other victims, gathering testimonials and support. Together, we formed an unbreakable alliance, united by the simple truth: Karen's reign of terror had to end. With every piece of documentation as our weapon, we prepared to expose the conspiracy and reclaim our neighborhood. The day of the big HOA meeting arrived with a thick layer of tension that settled over the community like a storm cloud. The town hall was packed. Neighbors who had suffered in silence, curious onlookers, and a few reporters who had caught wind of the brewing scandal. Everyone was waiting for the showdown that had been months in the making. Karen Whitlock entered the room like she owned the place, swaggering, confident, with that same smug smile plastered across her face. She wore her designer sunglasses indoors, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. When she saw me, standing tall with the binder of evidence clutched in my hands, her smile twisted into something colder. "Rachel," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "I suggest you think very carefully before you try to defame me here today. Any false accusations will be met with legal action. I will not tolerate harassment." Her threat hung in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. But I was ready. Years of training and hard-won experience had prepared me for this moment. The chair called the meeting to order, and I began. "Neighbors, thank you for coming. What I have to share today isn't just about me or my dogs. It's about the integrity of our community, about justice, and about standing up against corruption." I laid out the evidence methodically. First, the videos Ted had captured, grainy but undeniable footage of Karen trespassing on my property in the dead of night, taking pictures and tampering with the gate latch. The room murmured with disbelief as I played the clip on the big screen. Faces turned toward Karen, eyes narrowing. Next, the audio recording Malik had captured Karen's voice, clear and threatening, promising to make life unbearable, and warning of consequences if I didn't toe the line. The recording sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Then came Janelle's financial report. She detailed the fraudulent transfer of HOA funds into Karen's personal accounts, exposing a well-hidden embezzlement scheme. The numbers told a story of greed and deception that could no longer be ignored. One by one, neighbors stood to share their testimonies. Maria described her eviction and the unfair fines she'd received. Others spoke of similar harassment, painting a picture of systematic abuse under Karen's leadership. Karen's composure began to crack. She shifted in her seat, lips tightening, eyes darting around the room. When it was her turn to speak, she launched into a frantic denial, blaming jealous neighbors, political attacks, and misinterpretations. But the veneer of control was slipping fast. Finally, in a sudden, uncontrolled outburst, Karen lashed out. Her voice rising, hands trembling, she shouted, "Yes, I manipulated the bylaws. Yes, I wanted to clean up this town. This neighborhood needed order, and I did what had to be done." Her confession hung in the air like a bomb. Before the stunned silence could fully settle, police officers stepped forward, their badges gleaming under the harsh lights. They moved swiftly to arrest Karen on multiple charges: fraud, harassment, trespassing, and abuse of power. News cameras flashed as she was led away in handcuffs, the reality of her downfall playing out in real time. Neighbors watched with a mixture of shock, relief, and vindication. Some cheered softly. Others wiped tears from their eyes. In that moment, The oppressive weight Karen had held over us all lifted. Justice had prevailed. The dust settled slowly after Karen Whitlock's dramatic fall from grace. The once feared HOA president was convicted of multiple crimes: fraud, harassment, trespassing, and abuse of her position. The court ordered her to repay more than $150,000. In restitution, the money she had siphoned from the HOA's funds. She was banned for life from holding any leadership position within any homeowners association, a permanent stain on her reputation. Several civil lawsuits were also pending, filed by community members who had suffered under her reign. The sense of justice was powerful, but the healing of the neighborhood was just beginning. The oppressive HOA board Karen had controlled for years was disbanded. In its place, the community elected a new democratic board committed to transparency, fairness, and respect for all residents. The new board wasted no time. Every unjust fine was dropped, and all overly restrictive rules, especially those targeting pets, were rewritten to protect residents' rights and dignity. One of the first initiatives embraced by the new board was a monthly community dog walk created to honor Titan and Echo, the retired canine champions who had stood at the heart of the struggle. Neighbors of all ages would gather, walking their dogs through the winding country roads, sharing stories and laughter, a symbol of unity and resilience born from hardship. For me, life began to return to a new kind of normal. I resumed training local dogs, sharing my decades of experience not only in law enforcement canine work, but also in helping families bond with their pets. Word spread about my seminars on recognizing and fighting HOA abuse, and I found a new purpose in empowering others who faced similar battles. Generous neighbors, moved by our fight and victory, contributed donations to improve the property. The fence was rebuilt stronger, the doghouse refurbished with a fresh coat of paint, and the yard landscaped into a welcoming space where Titan and Echo could roam freely and safely. The local sheriff's department honored me in a small ceremony, recognizing the courage and dedication I had shown, not just in uniform, but as a community leader standing up to corruption. It was a moment of pride that healed old wounds and strengthened my resolve. Perhaps the most lasting tribute came when the community unveiled a new statue in the Central Park, a life-sized bronze sculpture of a canine unit dog and handler, symbolizing loyalty, protection, and the unbreakable bond between human and canine. Titan and Echo's legacy had become a beacon of hope for the entire neighborhood. The struggle had been long and painful, but it had reshaped everything. What began as a fight to protect two beloved dogs turned into a movement to restore justice, rebuild community, and reclaim dignity. And through it all, the message was clear: no bully, no corrupt official is too powerful to be held accountable. I will not pretend this journey was easy. There were moments when I felt utterly broken, emotionally drained, weighed down by the endless battles and the toll it took on my spirit. The harassment, the loneliness, the fear of losing Titan and Echo, it all felt like too much, but I never gave up. I fought for my dogs, yes. They were my family, my history, my heart. But in the end, what I fought for was so much more. I fought for everyone's freedom, the freedom to live without fear, without oppression, without bullies like Karen deciding who belongs and who doesn't. Our community is stronger now because of that fight. We rebuilt with transparency and trust. Neighbors who once hid their stories now come forward, sharing their own struggles with HOAs or similar battles. That courage is contagious, and it fuels change. We are no longer silenced by fear or manipulation. Instead, we stand together, resilient, informed, and united. If you have a story like mine of standing up to injustice, of fighting for what's right, I want to hear it. Comment below and let me know about any HOA horror stories you've experienced. Your stories are incredibly important because they shine a light on injustice and empower others to find their own strength. And who knows? Maybe your struggle, your triumph, could be the next incredible story I get to share with the world. Together, we prove that even against the greatest odds, standing your ground can change everything. This is more than a story about dogs and bullies. It is a testament to the power of truth, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. Never back down. Never give up. Justice will find a way.